Hi, welcome to Lesson 3. This lesson will focus on assessing emergent literacy skills, word recognition, spelling, all of those types of skills that we need to assess early in a child's reading development. Some of the very first information we can get from early readers is about their concept of print. Do they know how to hold a book, that it has a beginning and an end, a front and a back, an up and a down? Do they understand that reading goes from left to right? All of those are very early literacy skills that when we assess, we can get some valuable information about students' understanding of the whole concept of print and how that works. We also can then move into assessing whether or not students understand or are able to differentiate phonemic sounds. Can they tell which sounds sound the same or which ones sound different? That whole idea of phonemic awareness is critical for student success as they become readers. Once we've gone through some of that and students have moved a little bit further, we can assess where they're at with their alphabetic recognition. Have they made the connection between sounds and letters? All of these fall into that emergent literacy category, and those are some of the assessments that we do with our earliest readers. Here's just a list of some of the assessments that we use with emergent literacy concepts. Some of those I've kind of talked about already, but obviously these types of assessments need to be done individually, one-on-one with students. And so these are not the types of assessments that you can do in a whole group or even in small groups. You really need to work one-on-one with students to get specific information about where they're at. Of course, the data that we get from these assessments is helpful in understanding where students are at and what we need to do to move them forward as readers. Unless you work in early childhood or in very early grades, kindergarten, you maybe won't do a lot of work with the emergent literacy assessments that we just talked about. But by and large, you will all do some sort of assessments with word recognition ideas. These are some of the most important tasks for primary teachers, is to know where your students are at in these areas and move them forward. So the word recognition category for assessments includes phonics and whether or not students are making those connections between letters and sounds. Can they see a printed letter and know what sound that makes, or vice versa? This also includes high frequency words and sight words. And I just want to take a quick moment. Often these two terms are used interchangeably. They're not the same. High frequency words are those words that most often show up in the English language as we're reading. It's very important for students to know those words because they see them so frequently. Sight words are the words that students automatically recognize when they see them and are able to read them. Certainly we want all of the high frequency words to become sight words, but children's sight word vocabularies are very different. For instance, students recognize their name. That's a sight word for them very early on. And so depending on where a student comes from, their background, all of that has a large impact on what those sight words are. So we want to move students to making sure that those high frequency words become sight words. Essential words are words that are often used. We work on these essential words with readers who are perhaps a little bit older but are still struggling with reading, and these are the words that are essential for them to know. These are kind of these survival words, and there are lists of all of these words in your text as well. And then we are able to assess where students are at with their ability to use and understand and recognize prefixes and suffixes. All of those assessments give us very specific information about where students' strengths are and where student weaknesses are. And you can see all of that, all of those would have would really give us a lot of information and help us figure out where we can best support students, especially if they're struggling. Just briefly, I want to talk about spelling assessments. These are very common. I think spelling tests are still quite prevalent in most classrooms that I'm involved with. And this information, again, helps us know where students are at in their ability to spell a word. We need to recognize that that is a separate skill from being able to recognize the word or read the word or understand the meaning of the word. This is their, whether or not they can put the letters in order to correctly spell a word. Spelling is developmental. We need to embrace and appreciate invented spelling as a normal part of the developmental process of spelling, and recognize that even though students may not be spelling words correctly, there are patterns in the letters that they're using that are developmentally appropriate, and that can give us information about where they're at in that process as well. There are assessments that go beyond just the more traditional weekly spelling test that can give us more information about where students' strengths are and weaknesses are when it comes to spelling words correctly. So make sure you take a peek at that and think a little bit about how spelling fits into that assessment piece as well. So what do you need to do for Lesson 3? Watch this video, of course, and then there are 2 chapters to read in the Assessment for Reading Instruction text. One is on emergent literacy, one's on word recognition and spelling. And again, those 2 chapters give many, many examples of assessments for each of those areas. So your assignment then for this lesson is to work with your one or both of your field experience students and give them at least one assessment that assesses any of those areas that we talked about. If it's a your younger elementary student, that would be your option to use the emergent literacy assessments. By and large, as the students get older, you're going to not use those, and then you'll want to focus on some of those word recognition, phonics types of assessments. So you can choose, again, any of them that are in the text or any that you are more familiar with or more interested in using, and then you'll fill out that same type of report that you did last time. Please, again, make sure that you keep that to 1 page. This doesn't need to be too in-depth, just needs to cover those areas that are listed. So as always, let me know if you have any questions, and we'll see you soon.